to Life Chatz with Maggie and Bunny. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Bunny.
Hello, hello, hello. Well, today, do we have a topic for you? Today, we're going to talk about how do you measure success? Whoa.
Yeah.
What is success?
Mm-hmm.
Is the way you measure it different than the way society measures it? Is it different than the way your employer measures it? There's so many bars for that one word.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different definitions for that one word. So today, that's what Bunny and I are going to talk about is what do you think about success? And then we're going to send you to another site at our Voices of Empowerment where there was a conversation about that as well. A few days ago, I wasn't present for that conversation because I was ill and unable to speak well. But today I'm going to have my turn of talking about how do you measure success, and we'll see how that goes. But for me, at this age that I am of 64 years old, and I don't hide it, that I'm going to be 65 this year.
Yay.
I don't hide it. But I measure success quite differently than I did 30 years ago.
Mm.
To me, I measure success about me.
Mm.
The only bar that I have for my success is whether or not I am happy with me. When I look in the mirror in the morning, and I don't mean visually when I look in the mirror, I want to look at it like maybe metaphorically.
Yeah.
When I look in the mirror of life, am I happy with who I am? And if the answer is yes, then that to me is successful. Because at this stage of my life, I've come to realize that I'm the only one who gets to say whether or not I'm successful. Because all the rest of that stuff, how society measures success, is going to fall by the wayside. And I think, especially for what I do with death and dying, it becomes even clearer to me because as I am with people when they're dying, there's a very different definition of success. You know, there's people who have all the money in the world, yet they want one thing that they can't have.
Yeah.
So success to them is something very different. Success to somebody who's homeless is very different than to a billionaire. So I learned during my life that I'm going to get off that ride that decides what is successful for me. And I'm going to decide what is successful for me. And I can honestly sit here today as we're talking and say that I 100% feel successful with who I am and the life that I choose to live and how I choose to meet each day. Yeah. What about you, buddy? How do you measure success?
Well, in that discussion which we had, which is where we're part of a group called Voices of Empowerment, and we did a podcast. So go look that up on YouTube and Spotify and everywhere else where podcasts are. But I was able to participate in that conversation. And what I had said there was, kind of like I used to go along the traditional ways of looking at success. Well, first of all, I was the first person in my family to graduate from high school. So that was a measure of success for me. Now, because I, at 19 years old, expected so much more from my life when I was given my diploma, because my mother was the one who, she was 1 year away. She actually had me when she was in high school. So she wasn't able to return to high school, and then had to do her GED later. It was a drive for her to enforce into us, or to impart into us, to at least finish high school, at least finish school before you have kids, before you do the things, because it's a lot easier if you do it before you start to take on those responsibilities. So I handed her my diploma because I was like, I'm going to be doing way more than this. And so, so I handed her my diploma. And then I did go to, McMaster for a year, but then I didn't like it. So then I dropped out. Then I went to Niagara College for a year, and then we ran out of money. At the time, my fiance, but then, we wound up getting married after, but, he didn't have a job, but I did. But my job, I was working part-time at Walmart or at Wendy's, and they told me it was because of my availability and because I couldn't work during the day. And so if I opened my availability, then I could get full-time work. And since we needed money and he was close to graduating, I said, okay. Now, of course, in those moments, I actually kind of I still felt successful, but then later when I didn't return, because I had every intention of returning, and I remember, you have to go to, like, your dean and everything to drop out. Especially it was like it was February, and we only had till the end of April, so it was only a couple of months away, and I had really good grades, and I loved it. I was doing computer programming, which I absolutely adore. But I thought it was easier or better for our family because he was a few credits from graduating. I still had like another year or more on top of that. So we thought that this would be good and that I would return in September. It didn't happen. And like, like I will say, life happened, and,
Yeah.
but, then also like my whole ideas of everything changed too. The things that I wanted to be when I was a kid, I wanted to be a Air Force pilot. I wanted to go to Royal Military College in Kingston. I wanted to be the first female snowbird pilot. Like I had all of these ideas, and then it was like engineering, and then it was computer programming, and then I didn't do those things. And as I got further into my life and living my life, the ideas of where I was successful and what measured my ideas of success changed. They
Hmm.
changed because it sort of was changing because I wasn't measuring up to those ideas of success. And I started to reevaluate what was important in my life. And you and I have talked about this before, is that for us, it's much more like money isn't the goal. Getting the amount
Good.
that yeah, yeah. No, it's good for helping out in life
We
in a
need
lot of
it in
different
this
ways.
world. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
But it isn't our main like thing
Yep.
that we strive for. And even the amount of followers that we have, or the amount of people who listen to, or amount of people who read our books, those numbers aren't necessarily to us the end goal. Like that's
Right.
that's not our
It's
measure of
not the
success.
measure of success for our company.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so even things like I say, like, and I mean, whatever, but we are successful when we say things like, if one person reads one of our stories in one of our books, that and they can, be moved by it or touched by it or have some kind of impact on their life, we already love that. That's like enough
Right.
for us. That makes it all worthwhile. And right from the beginning, when we had our first book and the title of the book triggered somebody, and because they didn't have a good relationship with their mother, and so they said, "Mom's love, how dare you, name your book this, when not everybody has a good relationship with their mother. Didn't you think about the rest of us?" And we were like, but we want to celebrate moms. We want to celebrate the love. And this
Yep.
is, this is what we want to with our book. And we let it sit for a minute. And actually the person then messaged back and said, actually, I thought about it. And, and then they said, it's a great book. It's a great title, and all of that. And it was like right there, I said, look, we didn't even get the book published yet. We
Yep.
didn't even get a single author signed up yet at that moment, and it already had an impact, a positive influence and impact on somebody. And right
Yep.
there was like success for us right there. Like honestly, both of us have said, and not that
Before
we're
the book was even out.
yes, both of us said, like, this is amazing. And it even helped us too as a business. And that's another thing too that we've learned, is every time we do a book, every time we do something in our business, every time we go away, we actually expand us too. And that
Yeah.
to us is even more important than the numbers, than the money rolling in. And again, we're not opposed to because we also do know that the more that money we can raise, the more we can give, because that is
Right.
also something that is important for us as a company. So, and making more impact and having more reach. Like, if the more people who are involved in our books, the more people who are following us, the further our reach is, the more potential we have to
Yeah.
help more people. So of course, those are important. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of brings up another point, that sometimes success comes with responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
That, for a lot of people, if you're not successful, if you stay at the low end of the totem pole in your job and you're not very successful, you don't have the same responsibility as somebody who has moved up the ladder and is now a manager or is now a VP or something like that.
Sure.
And it's the same thing with our company. The more success
Mm-hmm.
we get, there's also more responsibility and more expectation and that kind of stuff.
For
So
sure.
sometimes people avoid success because of that. Are they really avoiding success, or are they avoiding the responsibility that comes along with it?
Well, I know we talked about this a couple of years ago. I think it could even be 3 years. At least it was at least 2022, but it might have even been earlier. When I mentioned the fear of success, and a
Yeah.
lot of it does have to do with the responsibility. Um, and this was in my own personal business, with the Bunny Keating, with the tarot readings and psychic and animal communication, and all of that. Because there was also the thing, we talked about, with Tyler Henry, how he has a really long wait list to get on, and so there's disappointment. So I didn't want to disappoint people. So there's like when you're so successful and you start having wait lists that are too long for
We
people
don't have
to
a really long wait
we
list.
don't have a really long wait list. We don't have a really long wait list. Yes, there are, some appointments that are set up and that sort of things, but we don't have a miles long wait list. And when guests want to be on our podcast, we could get them in this year, like we don't have to say
We have a
we're
longer
booking for
wait
four
list than we
years.
had before we started.
For sure, for sure. And and there is even, when we talk about when we get to that cutoff point for authors for the books too, when we have to say, I'm sorry, like it's we have too many authors, what that's going to look like too. There are going to be people who are going to be disappointed, but then there's going to be excitement around that too. And that's the thing, is like, there is a dichotomy of that. Like, you have to hold both of those things. So you have the success, which also on the other side has the disappointment, has the other, the responsibility, the other parts of it, that you have to hold them both. And in the future, even, we know that we're set up to hire outside people to help us. Well, then when you now are responsible for their livelihood, so the business decisions that you make affect
Right.
if they're going to get paid, right? Like, if they're going to have a job, those are also, your success is their success. And so there is responsibility in that too. And I mean, I'm sometimes I shake my fist at the universe, but a lot of other times I know that it's setting us up to be ready for these things to come. And
Right.
and yeah, that's something that, um I do take very seriously, I guess, is just kind of thinking about this. But going with the flow for me is more important, I think.
And
And
it is for me as well. And it comes easier. And
mm,
I think that's why I was able to let go of this earthly definition of
right.
success, because I can 100% say that I completely trust the universe. I
Mhm.
completely trust that the universe is working with me and not conspiring against me.
Yeah.
I believe that everything happens for me and not to me.
Hmm.
And when you truly believe that kind of stuff to your core, it changes your thinking. It changes
Right.
your priorities. It it doesn't make you any less driven. I'm
Hmm.
still very
Hmm.
driven to do things. And as you know, from all the projects that I have and the
Yeah.
businesses that I have, I
Yeah.
am a very driven person and
Hmm.
do a lot of things that I'm passionate about.
Absolutely.
but I do them because I'm passionate about them,
Right.
not for the same success measure that I once did.
Mhm.
And I believe that's the difference when you can believe to the core of your being that the universe is working with you,
Mhm.
and it's not always your responsibility to do things. You have to just
Right.
be present. I have to
Right.
just be present, you know, like I wake up every day, and you know this. We've talked about it many times in
Yep.
this podcast. I wake up every day and say, "Okay, spirit, what are we doing today?"
Yep.
Because sometimes I have a calendar and sometimes I don't. And sometimes people who know me, my calendar can change
You're right. Yep.
because of a multitude of things. Because I wake up every day fully ready to be where spirit wants me to be and
Right.
do what spirit wants me to do and what the universe calls to me and what the universe places in my pathway. It's kind of like driving my car down the highway of life.
Right.
There's going to be, you know, when I had to go out of town today and there was roadblocks all over the place,
Mhm.
there's going to be roadblocks that come, but some of those roadblocks are actually success,
Yeah.
just taking you on a different path.
Mhm.
And it's trusting that those things you might not understand and seem like an inconvenience are actually for your good.
Yeah, it's funny because when you say that, it triggered the idea for me that um because sometimes like the universe always knows better. It always knows better. So the plans that I had made for my life when I was younger, and if I had done what I had wanted to do, the successes that I do have in my life now, like I didn't know I didn't how do I want to say this? Like um it has to do with my kids and how I have raised them and how much different my life would have been had the plans that I had set out had happened. The time I spent with my kids, the
And would you
quality
even
time.
have had kids
Well,
if
that
you had gone on to become a pilot? Like, would you have
right,
had time
right,
in your life to think
right,
about, I want to become a mom? Would you
right.
have laid aside what you would have had to lay aside even for that time?
Right. And I mean, I always had kids were always in my plan, but like you said, like it would have been when it would they have been at the time that they had been, would like, and then when, there was a quote unquote failure of my marriage, right? When my marriage broke down and became a single mom, what would that have looked like in a place where I was an engineer or I was in the military, I was in a place like, and because of the military experience that you had of being a military family, that also would I have wanted my kids to go through that? Like, because for me, I jumped around houses when I was young, and so I had talked to their father, like when we were discussing having kids and getting married, and I said I wanted a stable house for them where they didn't move every year, 2 years, 5 years, where they had a place that they grew up in, the same schools and the same friends and the same around family and all of that stuff. And for the most part, like that did happen to them. They did, right, right, pretty much all the way till Denton was done high school. In 2020 is actually when we moved here, and he graduated in 2022. So it was very much, yeah, they pretty much, and we actually moved closer to the school so he could walk when they reopened. So that was fine. He still had the same friends, he still had the same environment, and so those things did still happen. And I actually find that to be way more successful than the things that like we had planned, and the things that I had planned beforehand. And even the breakdown of my marriage, which I would have thought wasn't success, was a failure and not a success. But then 3 years later, meeting Steve, who was an amazing relationship, which I never would have had
Yeah.
I been married still. So it was, it's very funny how the things that you think you failed at actually, it was like that was a good thing. Like it was
Yeah.
actually good for me. So
And actually, even as you were saying that, I had a memory pop into my head about my own father having a conversation with me about success, and it's
Mhm.
what other people tell us about success as
Right.
well. Because at that time, I was getting divorced from my husband and becoming a single mom. My father sat in my backyard. He had 5 children. And he sat in my backyard as I was going through this trauma and said, "You were the one of my children that I thought would be successful."
Hmm.
And I looked at him and I said, "But Dad, I am." I said, "I'm raising 2 children in this horrific event that happened
Yeah.
and loving them and caring for them and putting them first."
Hmm.
I said, "I am successful. Maybe not the way that you thought it would turn out." Because to him, having a husband in the military,
Yeah.
that was like cat's ass. That was a good deal, traveling all over the world and that kind of stuff. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
But so that was saying I wasn't successful because that was coming to an end. Where my conversation with him was, your definition of success and mine are 2 different things.
Hmm.
And being brave enough to be able to say that. And to our listeners out there, that's what I would want you to take away from this podcast today. Be brave enough to decide what measures success for you.
Hmm.
And be brave enough when somebody else is saying to you, "Well, if you do that, that's not successful. That's not going to lead to success." Be brave enough to carry your own measure, to carry your own bar of what that is, and speak up and say, "I am successful."
I like that.
Because you are the only one who measures your success.
Hmm.
You are the only one.
Yeah. I really like that. That sums it up perfectly, I think.
Good way
So,
to end this
good way to
podcast,
end
then.
this podcast. Perfection. It's successful. No, just kidding. Just doing a
Whoa,
little.
look at that,
Yeah, yeah.
eh? And
But
we didn't
anyways,
even plan it. And we
we
didn't
didn't
even
even,
plan it.
yeah, didn't even plan that. But I will say, okay, so if anybody is listening and this is our part that we got to do, make sure you follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, actually any of our socials at Above and Beyond. Go to our website at aboveandbeyond.com, or email us at ataboveandbeyond@gmail.com, and keep listening, keep watching, and until
Which, by
next
the
time.
way, folks, I will tell you now, if you go to our website, you will see that Bunny was very successful at making it better.
Yeah. Well, a little bit more streamlined, yeah.
Have a great day,
Have a
everybody.
great day.
Talk to you
Bye.
later. Bye.